Hello everyone, and welcome to the MagM Coloring Book tutorials. We will be exploring the different coloring techniques you can use to bring your pencil crayon skills to the next level. You're going to need a set of pencil crayons. I suggest a set of 24 or more in order to give you the best variety in color, and of course a handy dandy sharpener. Gotta keep those pencils sharp. Today we are going to be going over the Bees Coloring Book page in the coloring book. The first thing you need to do is determine the colors we will be using. I've decided to go with a variety of colors. I will be using 3 shades of yellow, a light, mid, and dark tone, 2 shades of brown, 1 dark and 1 lighter dark tone, 2 shades of blue, 1 light, 1 dark, 2 shades of purple, 1 light, 1 dark, 2 shades of pink, 1 light, 1 dark, and 3 shades of green, 1 light, mid, and 1 dark tone. 2 shades of gray as well for the wings. I will also be using my dark sepia, black, and white. Now that I have my colors, I'm going to determine where each color is going to go. The brown will be used for the exterior rim. 2 shades of yellow will be used for the honeycomb background. 1 shade of the yellow will be used for the bees along with the darker sepia for the stripes and gray for the wings. 1 type of flower will be blue and we will use 1 shade of green with it. The pink will be used for a different type of flower, and finally the other shade of green as well. And purple will be used for a different type of flower, and again a different shade of green for the stem for that flower as well. Now it's time to get the color on the page. The first thing I'm going to do is place my color lightly in each section to ensure that I'm happy where I've placed each color. The reason why I'm doing this just light coloring is that if I do not like the placement of the color, I still have time to erase it. Pencil crayons can be erased at this stage. Later on, however, erasing pencil crayons will become far too difficult. I started off with an exterior, working my way inside. I already know that the honeycomb will be yellow to start, so I start with 1 shade for the exterior background and 1 darker shade for the actual combs themselves. I also know that the bees will have yellow in them, so I color that in. Now I'm going to determine the color of the flowers one at a time. The final touch is to add the light gray to the wings of the bees. With light coloring all done, I'm going to go in section by section to add definition. I'm going to start with the hexagons. But before anything, I'm going to determine where my light is coming from. Often to remember where my light is coming from, I place a pencil mark that I can erase at the end. Once I have determined my light source, I'm going to place a light brushing of the dark sepia to define my edges at the far end of the hexagon away from the light source. Then I add my darker yellow, following the shape heading towards the lightest point and switching to the mid-tones as I get closer. Due to the shape I'm shading, I'm going to have a bit of a curve to my shadow. I'm also going to take into consideration the objects in front of the honeycombs, which are going to cast shadows onto the honeycombs themselves. Once I get my dark and mid-tones done, I'm going to mix with my lightest color. That means I'm going to go over the entire honeycomb with my light tone, and then I'm going to go back just to refine some of my dark edges that I might have lightened in the process. My lightest point is going to be near the off-center of the honeycomb in the portion closest to my light source. The reason for that is because the honeycomb is actually a convex shape. When I start shading, I usually start from my darkest tones working to my light because I can press harder on the exterior and slightly lessen the pressure as I get closer to the center, as I get closer to my lightest point. That way, when I go back in with my light yellow, I can blend in a very smooth gradient. A good way to do that is to start as a spiral formation, working from the exterior edge, working your way gradually inwards in a circle. As the hexagon is slightly off kilter, you're going to have a slightly oval shape to your circle, but it's still a spiral nonetheless. I'm going to repeat this technique for the rest of the hexagons, remembering that my flowers and bees will cast shadows onto the honeycombs themselves as well. After I get the honeycombs done, I'm wanting to stop looking at the yellow, so I'm going to start with the flowers. I'm going to work with the dark blue color first, adding it just outside the stems and the inner edges where the petals touch each other. I'm also going to add a light shadowing heading from the stem out to the edges of the petal, but not too much. Then I'm going to take my white to place where my highlights are going to be on the flower petals. Finally, using my light blue, I create texture by doing small marks which begin from the stem and head to the edge of the petals without touching the edges themselves. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the white, going from the exterior edges of the petal, working towards the stem, never touching the stem. I repeat this technique for all the other blue flowers. Before coloring the stem, I'm going to do my purple flowers where I'm going to be using some very similar technique, but making sure that it's a little bit smoother. So I'm going to get my dark purple and define the edges where the petals touch each other and where the stem is. Then go to the exterior of the petals to put my white highlights, mainly in the direction of my light source. And finally covering it with the mid-tone purple for the rest, and blending it off with that mid-tone purple, returning to the white just to add those highlights back in. For my final flower, I'm going to do the same thing with the two pinks. However, once I've created the final blend, I'm going to go back with a dark purple to define my edges and create a light veins in the petals themselves. Finally, the stems of each. Each stem will be a particular shade of green. I use the whites for the highlights, then cover the whole stem with the green. I go back in with the white to define my highlights. The shadows of the stem, I'm going to use my dark sepia and place the light coloring over everywhere an object intersects the stem. The bees are made with a combination of black, sepia, and dark yellow, and mid-yellow as well. Starting from the edge of the stripe, doing small strokes, then transitioning to the sepia, then passing over the edge with the white, and doing the same thing with the yellows. As for the grays, where the veins, I'm placing a dark gray, defining the highlights with the white. However, before blending everything with the pale gray, I'm going to put some slight hints of yellow and pink in the wings to give the sense of transparency. The yellow background I'm going to keep pretty basic, so as to not distract from the rest of the design. The final step is the rope. Again, keeping in mind where the light source is coming from, I place the highlights with the white to make my life easier. Then alternate between a dark brown, a light brown, and the white at the end. I'm going to keep the area furthest away from the light source, transitioning to mid-brown and going over the edges with the white. For this, I work with my darkest colors from the outer edges away from my light source, gradually transitioning to my midtones and to my lights, and then blending with the light at the end, and then going back in with either my sepia or my white to increase the contrast. And with that, we are done. I think it looks pretty good. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this brings your coloring skills to the next level. Remember to have fun with your coloring, and remember where your light source is. Please share your finished drawing on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or TikTok using the hashtag MAGAMColoring2022. And with that, we will see you next time. Happy coloring!